Have you ever gone to the fridge, open it up, it's like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you just got home, it's not time for dinner, but you're kind of hungry, and you look in the fridge, and you go, there is nothing in here to eat. I confess, I am very guilty of that, because I want something that's quick and easy, or ready-made, which is why it's a good thing that I am happily married to a wonderful person who likes to cook good and healthy food. Because after all, once upon a time, I was on a first-name basis with the pizza delivery guy from Round Table Pizza in Walnut Creek. Gwen was mortified when she found this out. I digress. But the problem is, when you look in that fridge and you say, there's nothing to eat, but there's produce all across the bottom shelf. There's cheese, there's crackers, there's cured meats, there are chips and salsa, chips and hummus. I'm talking about our fridge at least. Plenty of things to eat if I'm willing to just go ahead and eat what's available. Imagine eating nothing but chips and hummus for 30 years. Or imagine eating nothing but chips for 30 years. Who here would get sick of that? Yeah, I know, I would too. So I can kind of appreciate why the people in the wilderness were like, oh my gosh, Moses, why did you lead us out here from Egypt? The funny thing is they say, there's no food, there's no water. We despise this detestable food. I'm like, wait. Didn't you just say there was no food? And then you said there's this detestable food. Hang on a minute. You're just complaining because you're not getting what you want. You're complaining because this is hard. You notice that there are no parts of the story in Exodus or Numbers or Deuteronomy where when the people are being delivered through the Red Sea, that they're constantly complaining the whole time while they're getting through that. Once they get in, they complain getting up to it. But once God's doing these powerful things on their behalf, doing good works for them, blowing their minds with this incredible miracle, saving them through the Red Sea and then collapsing it in on the army of Pharaoh, everyone's shouting and saying, yes, we did the right thing. Let's go to the land of promise. A week later, yeah, we're still going to the land of promise. A year later, yeah, we're still going to the land of promise. A decade later, Moses, are you sure this was a good idea? Because shouldn't we be there by now? It's like the kids in the back seat, are we there yet? 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 Parents, raise your hand if you've ever been tempted to uncharitable thoughts when the kids are annoying in the back seat. Going, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Raise your hand if you've ever been that kid. So, it's an interesting dynamic here. Now, granted, I'm not a big fan of the idea of God sending poisonous snakes into the camp to punish the people by killing them. But this is an ancient Middle Eastern tribal story in a cultural context and time and place completely removed from ours. And there are mythical significances to these stories. There are stories of ways of explaining things. There was the image of a bronze serpent in the temple for a while, and this is probably the origin story of that as a way of explaining it. But that's beside the point for today's story. So God sends these serpents into the camp, and they're all like being eaten and dying instead of living. And they say, you know what, fine, we sinned against God and you, Moses. Please have them stop this. And God does a strange thing. Normally I would say, like, all right, you brought the serpents in, you can try them out. I mean, after all, isn't that the story of St. Patrick? But no, instead, God says, all right, Moses, build a statue of bronze. Right, build a pole or a standard and put the snake around it. When they look on that, they will live. So, God wants us to look at the thing that is causing us death or lack of fullness of life. The thing that keeps us from where God is trying to lead us. To heal us and move us beyond that into new life and bigger life. What a strange concept. But Jesus doubles down with that same concept in John, saying, just as Moses lifted up that serpent in the wilderness, so I will be lifted up on a pole or a cross. 2 poles, technically. and the world will see me in the same way. But what caused Jesus being on the pole again? Sins in general, political corruption, political collusion, fear of political unrest. Basically, those who wanted to preserve power at all costs were willing to execute this man on a cross as a warning to those who would rise up and challenge the powers that be. So in other words, looking on a cross, looking on a crucifix, looking on Jesus is looking on the reality of the world in which we live, that God is trying to transform us into the fullness that God would have us to be. But because we are often short-sighted, we miss that point. We end up being harmed by the things that are actually going to help us move our way through. We have to look at those things. It's an interesting parallel, or interesting concept, to look upon the thing that is causing you the most pain in order to move through it. I think it's a powerful metaphor, particularly of death and healing and new life. It's easy to have courage, to step out and have discipline and make those things happen that seem impossible when you're in the midst of it and it seems to be going well. You can even go a week, a month, a year, maybe even a couple years. But after a while, it gets hard to maintain that hope. Sometimes we need to remember to look inwardly at ourselves and look at the world around us to see what is it that is keeping us from the fullness of life. What is God trying to bring to our attention to help us step into that and to also acknowledge it in the world around us so that we can work through it, grow through it, and bring life to the world around us. Tell me again, where do you see snakes on a serpent in common life?
You mean snakes on a pole?
Mm-hmm.
The caduceus of the doctor.
Caduceus. And what do?
Heal.
Healing. You see it in ambulances. Going in when life is threatened and bringing that healing. That's what we have to do. Not that we need to make the world feel judged or condemned, but what we need to do is prioritize how do we look honestly at the things that are keeping us from life, things that are keeping our neighbors from life, things that are taking away from us what is most important in our callings with God. So as we look at our lives, as we face our way through to Holy Week and into Easter and Resurrection and all the adventures that come as a result of that, are we in our Lenten journey, in our Lenten practices, willing to take the time to look at the things that are causing death in our world, that are causing pain in our world, that are the consequences of us being short-sighted, losing hope, losing courage, losing discipline, when things get hard, when it seems like it might not work, when hope seems all lost? Do we yell and complain at the person who leads us? Do we try to hold on? Do we ask questions? Do we look at these things? I hope that we have the courage together as a people, not only as individuals or as a congregation, but also society, to look upon the things that cause death in our world, that we can bring the life that God promises us, that leads us beyond the things that keep us hamstrung, the short-sightednesses of our lives, the things that make us want to harm others or project our frustration and fears on other people and blame them instead of taking that responsibility ourselves. So that we are looking first and foremost at our own selves and making sure that we are blameless so that we can help other people. May God give us the grace and whatever respective image that is important for us to look upon it and go, okay, I see what I need to work on. Now I will go and live. Amen.